Sister gave into our spoiled half-sister's tantrum and made her maid of honor, while I silently fume over her entitled behavior. My F26 older sister, F28, has made me maid of honor for her wedding in 1 month, and half-sister, F21, is throwing a fit. So for background, my sister Laura and I were raised by our mom without a dad for the first 5-ish years of my life. It was just the 3 of us until my mom met my stepdad. They got married and had our little sister, Carrie, not long after. My stepdad is an awesome guy. Before he came along, Laura, Mom and I lived in a tiny apartment with nothing much but second-hand items and each other, but we were happy because we had a roof over our head and food on the table. My stepdad has an excellent job, so once they married and had Carrie, we moved into a nice big house, a mansion compared to our apartment, and started getting nice gifts at Christmas time and birthdays. This is what Carrie grew up with, and whereas we grew up with a lot of it too, I don't think it affected us as bad because we remember what it's like to be frugal and to not have much. My mom to this day is still very frugal, and we love to go thrifting or making our own items like we used to anyways, so Laura and I are very separate from Carrie in that regard. Carrie has always been spoiled, but not in a throw a tantrum and ask daddy for a new car way, but she'll ask for a $500 birthday cake and get it, buy name brand things only, and if she can't have something for whatever reason, she'll pout for 3 days and be moody. So surprise surprise, she still lives with mom and dad and doesn't have a job of her own, and they seem to be fine with it, but whatever. Anyways, Laura's boyfriend of 6 years proposed last year and we were all thrilled. He's a great guy and we all love him. Back when she first got engaged, she gave me, her friend Charlotte and Carrie a box of beautiful earrings that said, "Will you be a bridesmaid?" And mine said maid of honor. We were all giddy and started coming up with ideas and discussing colors and cakes and all that fun stuff, but they decided to wait a year to save and to figure out what they wanted. Well, 4 months ago Laura announced she was pregnant, and as a family we were all excited. All except Carrie, who remained quiet and didn't say much about it. Laura then explained that her and Alan decided they want to have the wedding in 2 months, with about 30 to 40 people so that they can really celebrate before the baby. Stepdad offered them $10,000 so they could have their dream wedding, but due to the circumstances they asked if they could use most of that money on a house they were looking at instead, and he agreed. So Charlotte, Laura, Mom and I have been frantically planning things, and it's been a lot of fun, except for the fact that Carrie hasn't said much about it from the start, and whenever we start wedding planning she either goes on her phone or will not pay much attention. Finally Laura had a talk and asked her for more input and to participate more, and Carrie agreed. When we were on our way to the dollar store to pick up some wedding decorations, Carrie scoffed and said, "Dollar store decorations? That's so tacky." But we ignored her and did our thing. When we asked if she would help us make handmade invitations, she complained again and said it'll look like a bunch of preschoolers made it, and just stomped away. Finally, just recently we were all dress shopping, and Laura told us we can pick whatever dress we want as long as it's blue, because she wants it to be simple and we would be paying for it ourselves. So Mom, Charlotte and I went into H&M and found beautiful blue summer maxi dresses, different styles. Mom had lace, mine is a floral cotton, and Laura thought they were perfect. Except Carrie, of course, and she wanted to buy this $2,000 bridesmaid designer gown she found online. My mom told her that was ridiculous. Laura's gown didn't even cost that much. So Carrie of course pouted and whined, so Mom gave in and we all went to this fancy bridal shop. Carrie right away found a pink blush gown that she had to wear. But it was $1,000. Mom said a firm no. Plus it's not even blue like the other bridesmaids. My sister then said blue was the stupidest color for a bridesmaid dress because we don't even live near the ocean. Anyways, we all left and she had her little pout, and Mom lectured her and told her this is a frugal wedding, it's in our backyard, barbecue with only 30 to 40 people, and so she doesn't need a 2K designer dress of any kind. Fast forward to a few days later and Carrie says she found a dress to wear that she already had in her closet. Plus it was blue. So we thought terrific. But when we went over to Mom and Dad's, Carrie strutted out in her old prom dress from high school, which is basically a puffy ball gown bedazzled with jewels, and as anyone does. After high school she grew out of it, so her boobs were spilling out and it overall was not flattering. On top of all that, she was wearing a tiara full of sparkling jewels that she claimed she bought just for the wedding. Mom and Laura were silent, and finally I felt I had enough, so I snapped and told her she couldn't possibly be serious. Wearing a dress fancier than the bride is one thing, having your boobs spill out is another, but also wearing a crown on top of that? Who does she think she is? Carrie crossed her arms and said, "I'm the maid of honor, of course I'm going to wear a crown." This is when we all get silent until Laura speaks up and says, "Maid of honor? I made Amy maid of honor, you and Charlotte are the bridesmaids." Well, this triggered Carrie and she began screeching, "What do you mean I am not maid of honor? You told me I was. When you gave us those presents, I got earrings because I am maid of honor now. I don't know if for this past year Carrie really truly thought she was maid of honor and got the title bridesmaid mixed up, or if she was in denial or just simply didn't pay any attention to detail, because I've been maid of honor this entire time and she hasn't said anything about it until then. But this caused her to have the worst meltdown I think I've ever witnessed in my life. I truly thought people only acted like this in movies or storybooks. Whenever a Redditor would post about a bridezilla or wedding meltdown, I always thought this must be exaggerated, but this has been the worst meltdown ever in our family. Carrie began screaming, crying. She ripped off her crown and stomped around until Dad came down to see what all the fuss was about. Through her blubbering she told Laura her wedding was all wrong. She said she should be using that $10K for a nice wedding instead of that ugly brick house her and Alan wanted, because that's what the money was meant for. She also said it was the stupidest idea ever that my sister would want to get married while pregnant because you look like a fat swan in your wedding dress. And again she rambled onto something about how blue is a dumb color because we don't live near an ocean. I think at this point she's just pulling stuff out of her ass. Dad tried to calm her down and she finally screams that if she can't be maid of honor then no one can, and she won't go to the wedding. At this point Laura is a mess and is crying her heart out and I'm ready to smack that little witch so hard that the crown stays off her head permanently. But before I can say anything Laura says fine, you can be maid of honor, you win. And just like that, Carrie stopped crying and she gave a small smile before going up to her room. Mom and Dad start arguing, Dad saying there's nothing you can do to control a 20-year-old's behavior, and Laura had went to the next room to call Alan about potentially canceling the wedding. I'm so angry that I end up storming into Carrie's room to see that she's on her laptop ordering that stupid pink 2K dress. I was so dumbfounded at the nerve of her that I couldn't even face her. I left and didn't say a word. Downstairs Laura is crying to her fiancé and the parents are yelling all the while Carrie is happily in her room buying stupid crap because she got her way. I don't think I've ever been this angry. I wish Laura had more of a backbone. I would have told Carrie to not bother coming if she was going to act like that. I don't even know what to do now. I'm also hurt that Laura gave the title to her just like that because she screamed for it. I don't know what to say or do to anyone. What should I do? Update 1. When I made that post it was already 3 days past the Carrie meltdown, so I gave it a lot of time and thought and soaked in everyone's piece of advice on here. Alan, Laura's fiancé, had actually called me early this morning and asked if I'd be able to go over to see Laura, because he's fed up with Carrie's bullshit and we need to act fast. I was relieved to hear I wasn't the only one fed up besides those on Reddit, so I went over straight away. Laura was on the couch in her PJs, hair unwashed, and it looked like she had been crying the last few days. The image absolutely broke my heart and immediately she apologized to me and said she didn't know what to do now. Alan said he thought the three of us should all sit down with her and have an intervention, but Laura shut that down right away and said she doesn't think she could handle any more yelling. I agreed that being yelled at is the last thing Laura needs, and it should just be me and Alan. But Laura was nervous about that too. She didn't want Carrie to feel like she was being bombarded. So finally, after a few back and forths, Laura decided that she just wanted me alone to talk to Carrie, without Mom and Dad, and her and Sue together made a list of things that I need to address with her so that way things don't steer off topic, such as how it's unacceptable to yell at a pregnant woman, no matter the circumstances. How disrespectful she was to criticize anything with the wedding and the name calling, and of course the most important part about her crying in order to be maid of honor. I also decided to bring up with Laura about the fact that Charlotte and I, the other bridesmaid, were planning to have a fun bachelorette slumber party in a few days to help Laura celebrate. Laura's face lit up and she seemed excited. I told her it was supposed to be a surprise, and Carrie was supposed to come, but given the circumstances and the fact that it's at my flat I don't want her there anymore and I wanted to see if Laura was fine with that. She said she was, and that she'd much rather have her other friend over instead in place of her. I told her that was completely fine, and after some more talking I made my way to Mom and Dad's to see Carrie. As soon as I walked in Mom asked me what I was doing there, and I told her I needed to speak to Carrie. Mom looked around and in a hushed robe told me it's best I leave, because the last 3 days after things were resolved Carrie has been perfectly happy and no one in this family needs any more drama. I told Mom I was sorry, but things in fact were not resolved. They were far from resolved. That's when Carrie walked into the kitchen and asked what I was doing there. Mom tried to brush it off and say nothing. Amy was just coming to get something but she's on her way out now. But I told her no, actually that's a lie. I'm here to talk to you about what happened the other day alone. Carrie didn't seem pleased and Mom's face was as red as a tomato, but Carrie and I proceeded to go into her bedroom to talk. I firstly told her how completely unacceptable it was for her to raise her voice and scream at a pregnant woman because of how harmful it was for the baby. Immediately Carrie scoffed and said no it isn't. Don't make up lies to make me feel guilty. I told her what lies? She said the baby isn't going to be affected just because I raised my voice. It doesn't even know what's going on, you're just making stuff up. What the? This girl, I swear. I decided it's no use arguing with stupid, so I told her pregnant or not, this was Laura's wedding not hers, and all of the name calling she did and harsh criticism of the decorations was completely childish and unacceptable. I then brought up the fact how her throwing that tantrum to get her way was the most childish thing I've ever seen in my life, and that if things were reversed and I made Laura take away Carrie's maid of honor job she, Carrie, would have lost her mind, so how was it in any ways alright for her to do it to me? In response to that she told me I'm acting so pathetic and that I reek of jealousy. She then said there's no real problem here, you're just jealous. Laura decided she wanted me after all. I told her this was false, she wanted me, otherwise she wouldn't have asked, but agreed to make Carrie Mo to stop the fighting. Carrie then very smugly said there was nothing I could do about it now, so I'd better get over it. That's when I told her she was no longer welcome to the sleepover we had planned, and that Laura also did not want her to come. Until Carrie decides to apologize to both me, Laura, and our parents for her outrageous behavior, she was no longer welcome in my fiancé's home. Suddenly Mom burst through the door, I'm assuming she was listening in, and went completely ape. She told me I had no right to ban Carrie from the sleepover and from my house, and that the only reason I was doing it was to get back at her. She told me I was stirring up unnecessary drama and that at least Carrie didn't mean to hurt feelings the other day, whereas right now I'm doing it on purpose. This is when Carrie begins to cry and moan about how I'm always bullying her, and I'm not being fair. My mom then goes over to Carrie and starts rubbing her back and says, "I know honey, she's being very rude to you right now, you didn't start anything." Gag. That's when I noticed stepdad standing at the door and I said to him, "Do you not see all this? Did she at least tell you she bought that pink 2K dress?" Dad looked awkwardly between my mom, sister and me before saying, "I think everyone is stressed out and no one means what they say. Sisters fight, and I know by the end of the wedding you'll all be the best of friends again." At this point I really had enough. I told everyone I was leaving, and mom got up and said the discussion wasn't over. I told her actually it was over, and unless Carrie apologizes to me and Laura, I will not be speaking to her. On my way out I heard Carrie say there was nothing she needs to apologize about, but I kept walking. To say that I was hurt and angry is an understatement, and with how my head was pounding I just wanted some Advil and juice, so I went to the nearest drugstore. Now, this part might have been where I crossed over the line, I'm honestly not so sure. But in my last post I didn't mention, because I didn't find it relevant, that Carrie has a boyfriend she's been going out with for approximately 6 months. His name is Noah, he's 27, he's hardcore Christian and overall a really cool guy. I've met him at the city's university about 2 years ago, and we had a lot of the same courses together and became pals. He and Carrie have quite a bit in common, they both love animals, he fosters animals all the time, and Carrie at that point was debating on studying to be a vet, so at the beginning of January Noah moved back to our part of the city where he got a job as a pharmacist, and that's when he and Carrie started going out. Which we were all cool with because he really is a great person. Because of his Christian values he's very excited to get married and have kids ASAP. He's said multiple times he hopes to be engaged by the end of this year. Carrie is also his first relationship, which might be another reason why he's so anxious for the commitment. Anyways, I got some Advil and juice and was surprised to see Noah, because I didn't know he worked at this particular pharmacy, so he waved me over and saw the Advil and asked if I was sick. I told him no, just a headache from the wedding stress. He said, "Oh?" Carrie never mentioned any wedding stress, she said things were going terrific. This surprised me, but mostly pissed me off, so I asked him if that means she never told him about the situation a few days before. He had no clue, so I made it brief and I told him the highlights of her name callings, screaming, and choosing her own dress against my sister's wishes and how now she's the new maid of honor. This surprised Noah and he said stuff like, "Are you sure?" I know Carrie, she always hates yelling. She didn't actually make that big of a scene, did she? I told him yes, it was all very, unfortunately, true. Then I told him that if she talks to him, to please recommend her some sort of therapist, he knows quite a few, and I told him perhaps she might even need medicine for bipolar disorder for all I know. I told him I am now out of her life unless she apologized, and if I were him I would think very carefully before making a commitment to her anytime soon. He stood there and didn't respond, so I left, and when I went home Alan and my fiancé were playing video games and they asked what happened, so I told them everything. Alan and fiancé think I was in the right for everything, including warning Noah. Later on that evening however I got countless texts from Carrie and my mother who were furious that I mentioned anything to Noah just to start shit on purpose. I did not respond to any of the messages and instead I blocked both of their numbers for the time being. As for Noah, Carrie has him wrapped around her little finger completely, so I honestly don't see him doing anything drastic. He sees how she is when she's pouty, and how she is when she's spoilt, but I think all of that goes over his head completely. But still, I felt I needed to say something. I wish I could say I feel better and like a new woman. But I don't. I feel hurt and betrayed. It feels like my throat or my chest are clogged and I honestly don't know if it'll ever clear. At the end of the day Laura called me and said she really wants me as her maid of honor, but in order to keep the peace she is choosing Carrie. For now I will swallow my pride and my pain and support my favorite sister in anything she decides, and I'm going to love my new niece/nephew to bits. And NBSP, hey y'all, many of you have been messaging me for an update. I'm so sorry it's been a while, I never log into this account. So if you haven't seen the previous posts I'll link them below. First post was here on the group, second was on my profile because it got removed from here. Laura had the wedding. It was before the second lockdown and out on our family's farm with about maybe 50 people that showed. Carrie wore the dress she chose because Laura caved and then wore the tiara thing she picked out. Days before the wedding Carrie made Facebook posts directed at me, just statuses saying stuff like "Can't believe my own family would be so toxic and bully me." Stuff like that. So eventually I blocked her. Honestly nothing too out there happened during the wedding. Carrie got drunk and tried to sing and dance and make the attention fall on her, of course, but nothing overly out there. Gave me the cold shoulder big time, and if I would enter the room she would announce that she can't be around negative energy then leave, dragging her boyfriend with her. Her boyfriend proposed to her, and texted me asking if I would please try to make things up with her and help plan the wedding. I told him I was sorry, but I still wanted to be his friend, I just can't have her in my life. He told me he was sorry and he hopes we one day reconcile. Haven't spoken to Carrie in months, but Laura is doing good and they still keep in touch. Mom and my stepdad have been silent and I've just been keeping my distance as well. I don't have any of them on Facebook anymore, but Laura keeps me in the loop. Edit, on those of you saying I shouldn't have told Noah I think Carrie is bipolar, you're probably right. I want to say I never meant it in a malicious way. My good friend is bipolar, and recently started taking medication. I began noticing similar outbursts and traits between the two of them, and it was my friend who suggested Carrie might be. I brought it up to Noah because I wondered, since he's in the medical field, if he would have any knowledge or be able to convince her to see someone. I in no way judge anyone who is bipolar. Also, I in no way claim that I'm the victim or 100% innocent in this. Of course, I've had my own arguments with Carrie beforehand and during this, so I know she's not just the bad guy here. I usually try to stay out of any outburst her or my mom has had in the past. Update 2. Hey everyone, I know it's been a long time since my last update, almost 8 months, but so much has happened and I really needed some time to process everything. I've been getting a ton of DMs asking how things are going with Laura, the baby, and of course, Carrie. So here goes. First off, Laura had her baby. A beautiful little girl named Olivia who is absolutely perfect. I've been spending as much time as I can with them, helping out where possible since Alan has been working longer hours at his new job. The house they bought with part of that $10,000 is coming along nicely, they've been slowly renovating it room by room. The nursery is adorable, we painted it together while Alan was working on fixing the roof. Laura says those painting days were the most peaceful she'd felt in months. As for Carrie and Noah's engagement, well, that didn't last long. About 3 months after he proposed, Noah called it off. I only found out because he texted me asking if we could meet for coffee. When we did, he looked exhausted. Turns out Carrie had been making all these extravagant wedding plans, a $15,000 venue, a designer dress that cost more than their down payment would have been, and demanding her parents pay for all of it. When my stepdad tried to set a reasonable budget, she had another epic meltdown. The breaking point came when Noah took Carrie to meet his parents. His mom had prepared a home-cooked meal, and apparently Carrie complained the entire time about how basic everything was and made snide comments about their modest home. Noah said he finally saw what I'd been talking about all along. When they got home, he suggested they postpone the wedding until they could afford it themselves, and Carrie threw her engagement ring at him and locked herself in the bathroom for 6 hours. My mom, of course, blamed Noah for not understanding how special Carrie is and has been enabling her nonstop. But here's the kicker, my stepdad finally put his foot down. He told my mom that Carrie needs to either get a job or go back to school within 3 months, or they're cutting her off financially except for basic necessities. Mom didn't speak to him for a week, but he didn't budge. This led to what I'm calling the Great Carrie Meltdown of 2025. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, mascara streaming down her face, demanding I let her stay with me since I ruined her life by talking to Noah. My fiancé answered the door and politely but firmly told her I wasn't available, I was actually at Laura's, and suggested she go home. She refused to leave our doorstep for 2 hours, just sitting there scrolling through her phone and occasionally sobbing loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Laura and I have been getting closer through all this. She admitted she regrets giving in to Carrie about the maid of honor thing and said seeing how I handled everything made her realize she needs to be stronger with her boundaries. She started therapy to work through some of her people-pleasing tendencies, especially since she wants to model healthy relationships for little Olivia. The most surprising development came last month. My stepdad contacted me privately and asked if I would help him look into some resources for Carrie, career counseling, therapy options, even some basic life skills classes. He confessed he feels partly responsible for how Carrie turned out, saying he thought giving her everything she wanted was showing love, but now he sees it did more harm than good. We had lunch together without Mom or Carrie knowing, and it was actually really nice. He teared up when talking about how proud he is of Laura and me for being independent and resilient. As for me, I'm focusing on my own life. My fiancé and I set a wedding date for next summer, a small ceremony at a local botanical garden with just people who genuinely support us. Laura will be my maid of honor, of course. I've kept Carrie and Mom blocked on most platforms, though Mom occasionally sends emails that bounce between guilt-tripping and angry accusations. I don't know if Carrie will ever change or if we'll ever have a real relationship. Some days I'm sad about it, but most days I'm at peace with the distance. Life's too short to let someone else's tantrums dictate your happiness. So that's where things stand. Thanks for all the support and advice from my previous posts. It really helped me stay strong through all of this. I'll try not to wait so long before the next update, especially since with my wedding coming up, I have a feeling there might be more Carrie drama on the horizon.